This is video number 4, number 5. I think this is video number 5 in this series that is me putting an LS motor 5.7 liter V8 out of a GTO into my 1988 Honda Accord. Where we're at thus far is I tore down the GTO. I'm going to be using the front subframe from the GTO, the motor, the mounts, everything in the subframe makes everything contained. The steering rack is connected to the subframe. The suspension is part of the subframe. So right now I already have the subframe in the Accord. Now we're going to work on going into suspension and tubbing out the car and we're just gonna keep this whole thing moving.
And now, you're watching the Even If I'm a Billionaire I Refuse to Spend an Extra 99 Cents per Month on Extra iCloud Storage channel of YouTube. Welcome to Bodie Vision.
Hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on another video. We're gonna get right into it. So what I have right here, that's the good old Tractor Supply Special. That's just a regular old tub for a trailer, and all I needed to do was buy one of them. As I was buying it, I needed to make sure that I bought one that's just mild steel and not galvanized, because we don't want to weld on anything galvanized. So this is going to be really good, and all we needed was one, and I'll get into that a little bit later on how we're going to go ahead and do it. The first thing I need to do is I need to get the rest of the front end pulled off the Accord, and then we'll go from there. So now that everything's cleaned out, it's nice to kind of get a look at where we're at, you know what I mean? You can see what's going on. These old small tubs are gonna end up getting out of here. And the main issue is this comes down too low for the bigger wheels that I'm gonna be running, so I wanna clear it out. And I also want to make it look nice because I want this engine bay to be super clean when it's all said and done. So the trailer tubs are going to go right there. I'm going to have to get these cut out. And then also these are the shock towers from the GTO. I'm using them because of the suspension geometry, and I went into that in my last video. So if you didn't see that, go ahead and check that out after this video. So right now the engine bay looks kind of crazy because we just made that first cut. But right here, this frame section, I want to keep as much strength as possible. So that's probably going to stay. This can be cleaned up a little bit more. This could be a little bit more as well. And then now, looking at the trailer tub over here, I took some measurements in there to see exactly how far, or roughly how far I want it to go. And then we just have this line right here marked in the center. And we're only going to need to use one just because we can use, like this will be the left side and then that'll be the right side. And that's all we need. So this right now is just after the first cut. This is extremely roughly placing them in there. This looks completely wild, but you can get an idea of how they're gonna look. Now we want the top needs to come down quite a bit. So as much as we want the top to come down, we're gonna have to take away from over here. So if we want this to come down 4 inches, we just gotta come up 4 inches, and then that should be pretty good. And then also right here, the actual shape of the shock tower will have to be cut out as well. So I can imagine it's gonna be something like that, or even over to the edge. So that way the shock tower is just gonna meet up really nicely with this. So that's what we gotta work toward, getting this lower and then eventually getting this cut out. And you can already see it. It looks pretty wild. Trimming, cutting, looking, trimming, cutting, marking. Keep doing that and you'll eventually get them. So this is what we're looking at. You know, this left side, right side, I'm not too sure. But that's all trimmed out, it looks really good. This arch right here is exactly where the fender's gonna lay. I still gotta clean it out a little bit on this side, but before I get it tacked in, I wanna actually go ahead and make some dimple dies in here just because that's cool. It kinda gives it an old school flair. I'm into that. I think that looks good. And then also again, the top of this section somewhere is going to be cut out for those GTO shock towers that are going to be put in there. All right, so now that we have our holes drilled out, it's really important that as you're drilling out the holes for them to be the exact size of the dimple die, meaning this one's a little bit wider, this one's a little bit smaller. And if you can see right here, this is the actual die itself. So this size right there needs to be perfect with this size right there. Barely any play. As you can see, that's too small. I wanted to do two different sizes because I think that looks better. So the way that this works is you put this down, you put the metal in between it, then you put this down, and then it sits flat across, and then as it's in the press, you just push it down, and then it eventually makes this. Just like that, Martha Stewart style. Here's the other one. As you can see, it leaves that nice impression, so it goes from this flat and ugly to this super nice. Oh man, that is looking good. So we've just been working away at it, getting this knocked out. Now let me go back just a little bit. So what I ended up doing is we had the first one, or the one on the left side, that one, in order to fit it, I was trimming it, marking it, trimming it, marking it, like I said earlier. But then after I had one side to fit, I transferred everything over to the other side, and then I only had to make one cut to cut off a whole bunch of material, as opposed to a bunch of cuts trimming off a little bit each time. One cut, getting it all out of there. So all of the work went into this one, and then I got that one placed, and then now it's looking really good. And then the shock towers, it's really cool because I can kind of picture how it's going to look in the end, where a couple days ago I had no idea what I was going to be doing. So as we look at this, my idea is, if you can see this plane, I want that to continue on and to catch this right here. So this is just gonna swoop and go down nicely and meet there, and then this is gonna wrap around the whole thing. It's still a little bit loose in there, just sitting there, and then we're gonna have a flat edge right there. Now everything is tacked in, but I'm a little bit hesitant to weld them out completely because I don't have the coilovers yet. In a little bit I have a phone call scheduled with the company that said that they can help me figure out exactly what I need with the coilovers, work on getting a custom set made, but that's gonna take some time. So I don't know if I wanna make everything finalized before I have the actual coilovers, because I don't know if I need to clear that out a little bit more for clearance. I don't know exactly how big the top of the coilover is going to be. I need to make sure I have sufficient space for everything. I'm going to see if I can get one with a camber adjustment and a caster adjustment. I'm just going to have to see on that phone call a little bit later. But at this point, if I can just keep moving and get everything built out and tacked together, that means if I want to go back a little bit, I can just cut off those tacks and it's all good. Or when it comes to everything being finalized and weld day, I can just go hard welding and wrap the bay up. Alrighty, so we actually jumped ahead quite a little bit, but I didn't want to just keep showing you the same exact stuff. Cutting stuff out, tacking it, placing it, looking at it, and this is what we got so far. As you can see, this is what we just made. That looks really good. That's on both sides. I had to do a little patch over there. That looks good. That's nice and solid. And also we have these tacked in. So this is from the GTO, but we're going to use an E36 top or something along those lines. So we got these tacked in. The last final piece we got to make is right here. So this is just going to come straight over and then swoop down, and that'll be all good. That'll finish this thing off, and then once the engine bay is wrapped up, then we can move on to cutting out the firewall. Man, dude, I think this looks so good. It's so nice to kind of see it come together. You know, as I'm doing this, I don't exactly know what the end picture is going to look like until we get there, and I make changes along the way, thinking about what would look better. For example, this entire edge, I was going to take this and then dive it out around this part, and this is structural from the Accord, but I think that looks a lot better to leave this flat, and that's how it looked in the GTO anyways. That looks good. I'm really happy with that. So overall, we just got knocked out. The trailer tubs, this little area right here, and these holes, that'll be functional for drainage as well. And then we extended to this one. I wasn't even planning on doing this dimple die hole until I realized that it would look kind of awkward without it. Then just have the trailer tub, and then this extension, this is overlaid just a little bit, and then this is actually from the GTO. So at this point, everything's just barely tacked in there. If we want to go backwards or have to go backwards, we can. If we don't have to, which hopefully we don't, it's just ready to weld everything out. I'm not going to weld everything all at once. I'm going to kind of move around a little bit so that way the metal doesn't warp, so that way it looks good and we're not going to have any issues. Also, I'm still expecting a phone call a little bit later today on coilovers, so we'll have to see about that. And that's what's preventing me right now from finishing everything out. I just want to make sure the coilovers are going to fit before I can go ahead and weld that all shut. Now, if you are actually new around here, if this is your first time checking in, what's up? I want to let you know that this entire bay is going to be painted. We're going to finish everything out. That's what I do primarily, is paint. Some cars that I've painted that you might know of is the Hellcat Swap Miata, or Taylor Ray's LS Swap Miata, and also Taylor Ray's Subaru we just painted, wide body RSX. All of that stuff is on my channel. I'd like to invite you to check out some of that other stuff. Subscribe. There's so much more on the way. And that's going to be it for this one. So, like I said, like this video, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. You know what it is, YouTube. Let me know what you think. I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.